All right, so now let's talk about the fourth and final P, which is promotion, right? So we've talked about product, price, place. Now the question of, let's address the issue of how do you communicate with your market? How do you do it? Why do you do it? What are some of the decisions to be made when it comes to promoting your product? We call this IMC, or Integrated Marketing Communications, which is a way of saying that all aspects of communications from the company to the customer needs to be integrated, because there's a lot of synergies to be gained by integrating all aspects of your communications mix, which I'll be talking about the communications mix in a few minutes. Obviously, when you think of the fourth P of promotion, the first thing that people talk of or think of is advertising, right? They say, oh, it's advertising. Yes, it is advertising, but it's much more than just advertising. Because when you're communicating with your target market, you're not just advertising to them, you're doing many other things, such as sales promotion, publicity, public relations, personal selling. Right? Does that make sense? All these are parts of, and more. There's more to this. It's not just advertising. It could be communication to social media marketing. So we call all this integrated marketing communications. And that's why this quote here sums it up. For a business not to advertise like you winking at a girl in the dark. You know what you're doing. No one else does. In other words, some companies think they've got the greatest products in the world, but if the customers don't know about it, they're pretty much winking in the dark. Right? Does that make sense? You could have the greatest product, but if you don't know, or if your customers don't know, you are not going to get market, or you're not going to get much sales or revenue. Marketing communications is the way by which companies try to inform, persuade, and remind customers directly or indirectly about the products and brands that they sell. Right? Now, what I want to emphasize on this PowerPoint, on this slide, is the fact that advertising is much more than just trying to sell a product or persuade the customers to buy a product, because advertising is often not about persuading or getting someone to buy a product right away. It's about informing them, or it could be about creating brand awareness. It could be about creating a brand image. It could be about providing some information, which may lead to a sale much further down the road. But it would be incorrect to say that advertising is only about selling. You know, often you hear people say, well, I saw that ad, but I would never go and buy the product because I saw that ad. Or you hear people say, well, I saw the Super Bowl ad for Frito-Lay's, and it was really funny, but I didn't go out and buy Frito-Lay's chips because of that. Does that mean the ad did not work? Because you didn't go out and buy chips based upon that ad? No. The ad could have worked very well, because the objective of the ad could have been not to make you go out and buy chips, but what?
Make you think about it.
To make you think about it?
Talk to friends about it.
Beg your pardon?
Talk to friends about it.
Talk to friends about it, create a conversation, create a buzz. Right? Could be what? To increase brand awareness? To create a positive feeling towards the brand at a subconscious level, which stays in the memory banks, to where the next time you're in the store, walking down the snack aisle, you don't even realize it, but those two great ads you saw is the reason why you're reaching for Frito-Lays and not the competitor. You don't even know it, but it's happening at a subconscious level. Did the ad work? Yeah, in that case it worked. Did it work right away? No, it could work 6 months later. Do you know what I'm saying? It is not fair or not accurate to say that I saw the ad, but I didn't go and buy the product, so the ad failed. There's much more to advertising than that. There's far deeper objectives behind advertising or promotion than just to get you to go and buy the product. Right? Does that make sense? In some cases, you've got to create the brand awareness before you can get even close to selling the product. You may have to spend millions of dollars to just increase the brand awareness, brand recognition. Then we can advertise to try to sell the product. So that's why I have this example here of this ad. DuPont, the miracles of science is their slogan or tagline. It says, to-do list for the planet. 21 on their do list apparently is make humans as comfortable in the Arctic as everyone else. What is DuPont trying to do here? Indirectly, yes. Indirectly, yes. Eventually, yes. But this ad, they don't expect that you're going to see this ad and go looking for a jacket. Because you know what? Most people don't even know that DuPont, they don't even know what DuPont makes. There's no DuPont jackets out there. Are there? It's just the raw material used for something in a jacket, right? So you might say that is DuPont just wasting their advertising money? No, because what DuPont is doing here is creating a corporate image. It's letting you know that there's a company called DuPont, and it's letting you know that DuPont is doing so many things for you, me, and the planet that we're not even aware of, because their products are actually ingredients inside another product that we don't even know is DuPont. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
For example, you know all the cookware, the non-stick compounds on cookwares? What is it, Teflon? And some of these other products? There's all kinds of products, but Teflon is the most common. Made by DuPont, right? But we don't know that. We don't even care if it's made by DuPont, but we buy that product because it has Teflon non-stick chemical compound. So, this kind of advertising is called corporate advertising. It's called advertising to increase the corporate image, right? Which is not necessarily about selling DuPont products. Because, you know, you and I are not buying from DuPont. You know who's buying from DuPont? We're not even the target market. The people who are buying from DuPont are the manufacturers of cookware or carpeting, Stainmaster, right? All that things, correct? Yes.
This is also for like the ingredient branding.
Well, in this case, yeah, a lot of products DuPont make is ingredient. There's ingredients, correct. Right. Because we don't buy the finished product as DuPont, we buy it as part of a finished product. All right. So, what is IMC? Integrated Marketing Communications is a way of unifying all the promotional elements of the promotional mix so that there's a synergistic communications effect. What is synergy? Where the sum of the parts is greater than the parts separated, right? Right? That's what synergy is, correct? Which means you have to come up with a way so that all forms of promotion can provide maximum impact and maximum budget or maximum bang for your budget. And therefore, we call the marketing mix variables the promotional. The promotional part of the marketing mix variables is what we call the integrated marketing communication. This P right here, right? Okay, so traditionally, historically, a few decades ago, this is how the communications mix was put together. These are all parts of the communication puzzle, right? Packaging, direct response, interactive, direct marketing. Obviously, advertising is a big piece right there, right? Advertising, public relations. But they were kind of all separately developed. Maybe a different ad agency was handling different parts of this. But now, more and more companies are putting these all together so that they fit synergistically. And that's a contemporary marketing approach towards IMC. So whenever there's a campaign, you will see that they're using all these pieces and they're all fitting together and in sync. Like if there's a sales promotion, like a coupon that's being distributed, it'll be synced with the advertising, which will talk about the coupon or the promotion, which will be linked with the social media campaign, which is also talking about the coupon and promotion, which will be linked with the publicity that the company is creating. So it's all linked together, right? And that's called IMC, or Integrated Marketing Communications. So definition is right here in this box. I'll let you read it yourself, right? But the goal of IMC is to generate short-term financial returns and build long-term brand value. There's two things here. Short-term financial returns. So the goal is to create sales, of course, but it's also to build long-term brand value. You know, all the ads that Coca-Cola spends millions of dollars on advertising every year, just within the US, right? And of course, all over the world. It's not about just selling Coca-Cola products. Yeah, that's a short-term financial returns, but they're also building a long-term value of the Coca-Cola brand. I may have mentioned it in this class in one of the earlier lectures where I said that Coca-Cola brand value, remember I talked about how the value of Coca-Cola itself, the brand itself, is worth 80, 90 billion dollars, billion with a B. How have they built up that brand value? Through advertising and integrated marketing communications. So it's not just about selling the product, it's about building the brand value, right? Does that make sense? So now, let's talk about, by the way, when you see things like this, it says now you can start wondering where all those cigarettes you smoked had gone, right? Do you get that? Do you see that ad? So you know what these types of advertising are called? What are they called? What are they called? You heard of them. PSA. Public Service Announcements. Right? They'll have some message for society. Don't text and drive. Cigarettes are bad for you. The Truth Campaign. Against domestic violence. Don't do meth. Don't litter. Don't mess with Texas. Right? All these are what? Public service announcements. So the difference between traditional advertising and public service announcement, do you know what the difference is between PSAs and traditional advertising? The main difference is that PSAs, they don't have to pay for the advertising space or time. See, advertisers have to pay for their media time, like they have to buy the TV time or newspaper space, right? PSAs, the space or the time is donated by the media. Right? Does that make sense? So,
Do they have a quota or?
you mean the media?
Yeah, like a amount of hours to donate?
Yeah, they do. Most of them have some kind of a, if not a quota, some sort of a benchmark or guideline that every year they're going to give away a certain amount of their media space for public service announcements. It's a tax write-off,
Yeah,
right? I mean, they get something for it. Okay. You have to know the IDA model. It's the most It's one of the most well-known classic models of communications. It's a funnel. The AIDA model is basically a funnel. First, you've got to get people to pay attention to your message, right? Do you remember I talked about selective attention?
Yes.
Where I have, I can run an ad on TV, but I don't know if people are paying attention or not. Just because 1 million people supposedly saw the TV show doesn't mean 1 million people paid attention to my ad, right? Probably much fewer than 1 million actually paid attention. Of the few people who paid attention, how many people were interested in the product after seeing the ad and paying attention? Obviously fewer, right? Fewer people. Those who paid attention, only some of them were interested, right? Of those who were interested, how many desired the product? That is greater than interest. Desire means they actually, not just interested, but they actually prefer that product to other competitors, right? And then finally, you want them to, even a smaller group of that, will actually act upon it. That means they'll actually go and buy the product. It's a funnel. Agreed? The more people you can get to pay attention to your ad, the more people that you can get who will be interested. Even though it's going now smaller and smaller, it'll end up with a larger piece of the bottom, which will be your sales. Number of people who acted upon it. As you can see, all four of these, this is the cognitive step. Cognitive means what? The intellectual, the thinking, the rational part of the consumer who has to give their attention, right? The brain power to look at your ad, to understand your ad. The second is the affective, both second and third are affective steps. What does it mean, affective step? What does affect mean? What does affect mean?
Able to influence.
It's a more specific definition. In psychology, when they say cognitive, cognitive means thinking or rational, right? Affect is what? Emotion. Affect is emotion. Affect is emotion. It's the emotional part of you. Cognitive is the brain and the thinking, logical part of you, rational part of you. Affective is your feelings and emotions part. Does that make sense? So that's what's controlling your level of interest and your desire. That's happening from your emotions and feelings. Right? And the final is behavioral, which is you're willing to pay money and buy. That's a behavior. That's an action, right? That makes sense? So these are the different stages, psychological steps that lead to purchase. But it starts with paying attention. It starts with getting people to listen to your message and pay attention to your message. It starts with exposing them to your message, getting them to pay attention to it, getting them to be interested in it, getting a few of them to like it and actually desire the product, and then getting a few of them to actually buy the product. It's called the AIDA model. Steps in developing effective communications. First, before you create your communications strategy or your plan, you've got to know and identify your target audience, right? If your target audience is baby boomers, you're going to have a completely different strategy, advertising strategy, compared to if your target market is millennials or Generation X, right? If your target audience is highly affluent segment, different type of ad campaign, different type of communication strategy. If your target audience is people who have only a high school education, different strategy, right? So you've got to know if your target audience is men, different strategy. If your target audience is women, different communication strategy. So first you've got to know your target market. You've got to determine your objectives. What do I mean by objectives? Remember what I said earlier? Your objective could be to create sales, of course, but your objective could instead be to create brand awareness. Your objective could be to create brand image. What is your objective? You've got to identify that. Next, you've got to design your communications mix, right? By that, what do I mean? Develop your ad campaign, develop your magazine ad, develop your billboard ads, develop your, whatever it is, develop your or design your communications. Then you've got to select your channels. That means, do you want to put it on TV? Do you want to put it in a magazine? Do you want to put it on websites? Do you want to put it on moving trains and buses in the subway? Do you want to put it in social media? What will be a channel of communicating with the customer? Establish a budget based upon all these 4 steps above. You come up with a budget, like this is the number of dollars that I'm going to need for the year. Establish your budget for IMC. Decide on a media mix. What is a media mix? Media mix is your combination of different media that you're going to use. Print, within print, magazine, newspaper, outdoor, from billboards to trains to buses to Goodyear blimps or whatever it is, outdoor. You may use television. You may use social media. You may use radio, right? So decide on your media mix, and finally you manage your IMC on an ongoing basis, right? So these are the steps in developing your communications mix. The tools at the disposal of marketers are mainly these 6. The top 4 in black, the reason I have them in different colors is because the top 4 represent the traditional old school communications mix. These last 2 here, E and F, have been added the last decade or so as parts of the promotional mix. Before, when you, in a marketing class, you said the promotion mix, they would immediately refer to these 4. Today, when you say promotional mix, typically you're referring to 6 things, 6 items, 6 types of communications. Okay? Let's talk about each one of these. So we're going to talk about each one of these. I'll start with advertising. Why? Because that's the most visible, the most talked about. Everyone thinks of advertising. First thing to think about when you say marketing communications, the first thing everyone says, oh, you mean advertising. It's only one piece of it. There's much more to it. In fact, there are 6 things I showed you. But let's start with advertising because it's the most prominent of the promotion mix. Definition of advertising: any paid form of non-personal communication about an organization, product, service, or idea by an identified sponsor. Look at the key phrases in here, keywords. Paid. Advertising is always paid for by somebody. Non-personal. Advertising is always non-personal. That means it's not one-on-one, face-to-face. If it was one-on-one, face-to-face, we would not be calling it advertising. We would be calling it what? Is what? Not even direct marketing. Specifically, we'd be calling it personal selling.
Alright.
Personal selling. Like when you go to a dealership, the salesperson is talking to you one-on-one, right? That is personal selling. But that's not advertising. Advertising is not personal. Like you're seeing it on a TV screen, or you're reading a newspaper. You're not communicating directly with the manufacturer or the seller, correct? And the other phrase here is by an identified sponsor. Typically, whoever's advertising has to identify who they are, right? You should know who is talking to you, who's advertising to you. Short definition: paid, mass mediated, attempt to persuade. Pretty much this says most of the things said over here, right? TV advertising, mass mediated means what? Non-personal. Mass mediated means? I mean, mass media means not personal, correct?
Yeah.
That's why it says not mass media, not personal. TV advertising cost in the US per 1,000 households is about $14. Now that's really cheap if you think about it. You can reach 1,000 people through TV advertising for about 14 bucks. That's a lot of households, right? For 14 bucks for TV advertising. Yeah, so per 1,000 people it looks cheap, but when you do the math, you probably have to spend a couple of $100,000 just because it reaches millions of people. You know what I'm saying? Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can't just go and say, I want to reach 1,000 people, here's 14 bucks. Or I want to reach 2,000 people, here's 28 bucks. It doesn't work like that, right? We're saying that, yeah, you may have to spend 500,000 bucks, but because you're going to reach millions of people, it's going to work out pretty efficient, but you have to have a few million bucks or a few $100,000, which most small companies, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have 400,000 bucks to advertise on TV, right? So that could, but if you do have the money, it can work out pretty efficient. Which is why these big companies, like the Coca-Colas and the Frito-Lays and the Budweisers of the world, or the car companies, right? GM, Ford, BMW, Toyota, Honda, they spend millions in advertising because when you do the math, it works out pretty efficient for them, right? Done on a large scale. Agreed? Do you know the cost of advertising? Super Bowl advertising? I may have mentioned it in this class. The Super Bowl is coming up in a couple of months, right?
30 seconds for like 4 minutes or something.
That's pretty close actually. So last year, well this year, 2016 Super Bowl, the cost of a 30-second spot, 30 seconds on TV, was $4.8 million average. Close to $5 million for 30 seconds. Can you imagine that? Just the time. And that does not include the cost of producing the commercial. That could be another $1 million. But just to buy 30 seconds, $5 million. And then there are companies like Frito-Lay's that's buying 3 spots. That means $1.5 million. There's companies like Budweiser that may have bought 6 spots. So they spent $3 million just on one sports program. Forget the whole year. $3 million for one show.
That's you.
Yeah, it is the most viewed event, no doubt. Do you know about how many people watched the Super Bowl this year? How many people approximately? In the US, just in the US. Not even worldwide. It's not as high as 90, it's not that big. How many million?
60 million.
60 million, you said? It's like 114 million. 114 million people approximately watched the Super Bowl this year.
Just in the U.S.?
Just in the US. Right? Just in the US. So if you do the math, $5 million, $5 million to reach, if you can reach 114 million people, that's a few cents per person, right? Do you know what I'm saying? But it's 5 million is still a lot for 30 seconds. Very few companies have that kind of money. That's why usually it's the big companies that spend so much, right? On the Super Bowl advertising. Yes?
Yeah, but on the web you can actually control that. I mean, Google or Yahoo pay per click, whatever the number of people you want to reach, you just deposit that money, and once it gets to that number, it cuts off.
So that's the advantage of interactive advertising or online advertising, right? You can measure it and you can control, like pay-per-click, etc., correct? So then why do these companies still advertise on TV so much? Why don't they just do what you just said?
Because TV has a more reach, right? It's more people watch TV.
Way more people can be reached. That's one. There's all kinds of different reasons. Secondly,
The
Is
target
what?
people.
Less effort?
No.
Just turn on the TV.
yeah, from the consumer's point of view, but what is the advantage from the manufacturer's point of view? I mean, one is, as you said, much
You know
wider.
your target market, because there's certain type of people that will watch Super Bowl.
And there's certain type of people who will not do all this clicking and going online. You will never reach them through that kind of advertising. TV advertising, you can reach everyone. You know what I'm saying? From kids to 95-year-old people. Very few 95-year-old people are going to be clicking through things. In fact, very few baby boomers are going to be doing that. Yeah, you can reach millennials that way. So there's all kinds of reasons why these companies want to. Plus, there's an image thing. TV advertising is considered to be very good to create brand image. Online advertising still doesn't have that kind of prestige image linked to that kind of advertising. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if you advertise during the Super Bowl, it's like, okay, this must be a really big company, right? So there's all kinds of reasons why they do that. But the type of advertising you're talking about, the internet or interactive digital advertising, is much easier to control, manage. It's much easier to measure the effectiveness of that ad. It's very hard to measure the effectiveness of a $3 million Super Bowl commercial because you don't know how many bags of Frito-Lays were sold based upon that, or how many Audi cars were sold because of that ad, right? But whereas with online, it's easier to track that and attribute the sales to the advertising dollars. So there are disadvantages and advantages to both, right? In fact, that's exactly why you're on this slide. What are some of the, in fact, we've just discussed some of the advantages and disadvantages now, right?
Yeah.
Some of the advantages of advertising is very wide reach. You can reach a lot of people very quickly, which you can't do with the internet. Still, 100% of people don't have internet. But almost 100% of people have TV. Some have multiple TVs at home. Wide reach. The other thing about TV, about generally, not just TV, but generally about advertising is, advantage of advertising is, one is wide reach. The other big advantage of advertising compared to sales promotion, compared to publicity and the other things that are on that list that I showed you, what are some of the other advantages of that? One is definitely the wide reach part of it, right? What's the other advantage of advertising? It's easier to create brand image. To create brand image, advertising works really well. That's why you see the Coca-Colas and the Apples, they do advertising to create brand image. It's hard to build brand image through other types of communications, right? Disadvantage of advertising, hard to measure. What we just said, hard to measure the effectiveness. Yeah, it's still done. Oh, it's still done. They do it. But it's more difficult to do, to measure the effectiveness of advertising. The other big disadvantage of advertising is there's a lead time. That means from when you advertise to when you see the benefits or results, maybe 6 months, could be a year, could be 5 years. There's some car ads that you're seeing now that may affect your car buying decision when you buy your next car 5 years later. Do you see what I'm saying? It's very hard to, whereas when you come to sales promotions, which I'll come to in the next few minutes, the effect of sales promotions, what are sales promotions? Like coupons and things? You can measure it much faster. It happens right away. You can see how many people redeem coupons, right? You can measure it and it happens more immediately, right? Immediate impact. So advertising is, so those are the disadvantages of advertising, correct? You know, you see ads like this. These are classic ads. The Got Milk campaign. Right? They use celebrities. Got Milk campaign. 1980s, this campaign was launched. In which state was this launched in? Got Milk campaign. which now has become a legendary campaign, one of the most successful and most classic campaigns, the Got Milk campaign. It started in the 1980s. Which state? It actually started in California. It was started by the California Milk Processing Board to increase the consumption of milk in California. But it was so successful in California that they launched it throughout the U.S. And then they've launched it outside the U.S. also to increase the consumption of milk. Okay? It's called the Milk Mustache. They all have milk mustaches. They typically use some celebrity, and it ends with "Got milk?" Question mark, right? Fictitious celebrities to real celebrities. There's hundreds of models who have modeled for the Got Milk campaign, right? What I'm saying here is these kinds of campaigns would not work other than through advertising. Now, this is a print campaign or an outdoor campaign, which you'll see this in billboards and in magazines, right? So it's called a print campaign, not a TV campaign so much. Like the most interesting man in the world, you know what I'm talking about? What brand is that? Dos Equis. And again, a very successful campaign that has run for the last 10 years or so. It's done amazing things for the Dos Equis brand and for the sales of Dos Equis, right? Of course, as you also may know, they retired the most interesting man in the world, and they brought a younger version of the most interesting man in the world, just introduced last month. The old interesting man in the world, what happened to him? Anyone know? What's that?
He was based in the
Yeah, exactly. He went to Mars. They sent him off to Mars. You saw the last commercial, yeah. Look at it, you can Google it or YouTube it to see. The last commercial was he was going off to Mars. They were giving him a send-off, and because you can't really kill him, so they just sent him off to Mars. Right? But the ad agency and Dos Equis decided that it was time to change the most interesting man in the world. They sent him off to Mars, that's the way you'd expect him to go. He's off to Mars, right? And now there's a younger. Again, the point is, very successful classic radio campaign. This is basically, it was a radio ad campaign. The one I showed you earlier, this was a print ad campaign, right? Or an outdoor billboard ad campaign. Advertising is all about creating brand themes and taglines. You have to have an overall theme, then you have to translate it into a tagline or a slogan. That's why the most interesting man in the world, the theme was, to be interesting and unique, a different kind of person who drinks Dos Equis. And the tagline was, "Stay thirsty, my friends." Right? Remember that? Stay thirsty, my friends. So you have to have a tagline that conveys the theme. Some classic campaigns are represented on this slide. Our hamburgers are bigger. That's what they wanted to say. Instead, now that would be too boring, right? If you just said, our hamburgers are bigger, who's going to pay attention to that, right? Instead, what they did is said, where's the beef? Where's the beef? By the way, this is a classic campaign. We don't have the time, nor is this an advertising course, for me to go through the details of the history of each one of these. But suffice it to say that these were classic campaigns that launched new products and new companies and made brands successful just through the power of, not just, but largely through the power of creative advertising. What company is this? The first one, our hamburgers are bigger. Is what? Wendy's. Wendy's in the 1980s started a campaign called Where's the Beef? Exactly. Where's the beef? These three little old ladies, they were like 85 years old. Again, you can YouTube some of these things and, very creative. And it started in the 80s. And most people didn't know about Wendy's. It was all about McDonald's and Burger King. And then Wendy's came out with these three little old ladies that were going from McDonald's to Burger King and all these fast food places demanding, where's the beef? The idea being, they were upset that they're not getting, where's the beef means they were saying that these other burger places are giving you small patties, whereas Wendy's was going to give you the real beef, the big patties. And by the way, what was part of their strategy with the patties? Who said that? Right, square patties. They're the first ones to come with square patties, which stuck out from the buns, right? Instead of the round patties that all the burger places had. And that's why they had square patties and demanded from the other burger chains, where's the beef? Because we got the beef. It became so popular as an advertising campaign that the slogan became a part of the English language. Nowadays, when you hear where's the beef, they don't know it came from Wendy's 1980s campaign, but it means something. It means, if you see a presentation and say where's the beef, that means what are you saying?
What's the information?
Where's the content? Where's the substance? Where's the, it's not deep enough. It's not, you're not giving me enough, right? But it started with this Wendy's campaign of the 1980s, which made Wendy's into a serious threat and a competitor to McDonald's and Burger King. Our tissue is softer. That's what they wanted to say, but that would be such a boring way to say it. Instead, what did they say? This company, Charmin. You know Charmin toilet paper? They launched this campaign. This is again way back in the 1960s, I believe they launched it. First TV campaign for Charmin. Please don't squeeze the Charmin. The idea was the Charmin is so soft you can't resist squeezing it. So all the shoppers would be trying to sneak in the grocery. They would show these TV commercials where people are trying to look around like this. Again, you can YouTube some of these classic commercials in the 1960s, black and white commercials. But the shoppers would be buying toilet paper and they'd be looking all around like this and sneaking a squeeze of the Charmin. Right? And as soon as they're doing that, Mr. Whipple, I'm giving you way too much information, who was the brand mascot for Charmin, is like the Charmin police, will catch you and say, excuse me ma'am, don't squeeze the Charmin. Okay? And that's where the slogan came out, don't squeeze the Charmin, because it is so irresistibly soft that you gotta squeeze it. So everyone's trying to squeeze the Charmin when no one's looking. Right? And Mr. Whipple will always catch you and say, don't squeeze the Charmin. Okay? But what is the message they conveyed through all this campaign? Much softer than the other tissues, right? No hard sell, just a good car. We don't have to sell you the car. It's just a great car. We don't have to sell it to you. We're just, it was called the Drivers Wanted campaign. We're just looking for some good drivers who want to drive our cars. We're not going to sell it to you. We're looking for drivers. You see what I'm saying? What company is that? It was called the Drivers Wanted campaign. Anyone know? No? Volkswagen. Exactly. Volkswagen launched a campaign saying drivers wanted. In other words, what they're saying is, all the other companies are saying how good their cars are and how great, and buy this, buy that. They're like, we're just looking for drivers. Because the cars sell themselves. We just want drivers to drive our cars, right? We don't rent as many cars, so we have to do more for our customers. We try harder. So, this was the campaign, We Try Harder. I think I've talked about it in this class. The We Try Harder campaign. What company is this? Avis. They started off by saying, we're number 2. Many years ago when Hertz was number 1, there was no one else but Hertz in the rental company, the rental industry. A small company called Avis came up and their ad said, we're number 2. And literally they showed a hand like this saying, we're number 2. And everyone was surprised and shocked because everyone said we're number 1. And there's this company saying we're number 2. So that people paid attention. Remember? Attention, interest, desire. First you got to get their attention. People paid attention to a company that said, we're number 2. But then they said, because we're number 2, we try harder to please you. We're going to take better care of you than Hertz. Because we're number 2 and we're trying to be number 1. So we're actually going to take care of you, unlike the big company. Right? Next thing you knew, they had overtaken Hertz. So successful their campaign was, and their marketing. So then they dropped the we're number 2, because they were not number 2 anymore, but they continued with, we try hard. We try hard. So these are classic ad campaigns that have turned companies around, right? But you have to come up with great slogans to transform a theme into a great way to express that theme, right? That message. That's what it's all about, advertising. Celebrity endorsement is a big part of advertising. It's all about getting the right celebrity endorser, right? There's a reason why companies pay millions of dollars to, whether it's Britney Spears or Tiger Woods or LeBron James or Peyton Manning. You know how much Peyton Manning gets from Papa John's and from... Exactly. I can't even say it without humming it, right? With that tune, correct? Chicken parm tastes so good, and so on and so forth. These are all classic lines from Peyton Manning ads for Nationwide, Papa John's. Celebrities are a great way to influence consumers into buying a product or creating a more positive impact, right? Let's talk about media schedule patterns. Continuity, concentration, and flighting. So you can schedule your advertising budget continuously throughout the year. That means you're always spending a little bit of money. You're always spending a little bit of money throughout the year from January to December, right? Another way of scheduling your media budget is concentration. That means you're just doing it one time a year. Maybe one time a year, right? What is that? Concentration. Example of that would be, let's say a tax preparation company. They only need to advertise during April. Yeah, first quarter, right. Or a company that sells Halloween costumes. Why would they advertise any other time other than September maybe, right? Before Halloween. Does that make sense? Right? So these are companies that may be using just a one time or one part of the year. They'll concentrate it, put their whole budget into that, right? Flighting. Flighting means you're doing your advertising not throughout the year, but maybe 3 or 4 times in a year. Seasonal. Right? 3 or 4 times. Like maybe if you're a flower company, you may just do most of your advertising